At Christmas dinner, my daughter-in-law met me at the door and said, "Losers don't get to come inside." I walked away smiling. She has no idea what I just did. Days later, my son called me crying. I drove to my son's house. That's what I'd been calling it for 3 years. That's what everyone called it. That's what they called it. Posted it on social media, bragged about it to neighbors, renovated it room by room with checks I wrote and they cashed. Michael and Vanessa's house, their first real home. Their American dream. Except it wasn't theirs at all. It was mine. My name on the deed. My mortgage payment is automatically withdrawn from my account on the 1st of every month. My property tax bill that arrives every spring. The house my husband's parents built in 1962. The house where Robert spent his childhood. The house I'd offered them to live in, rent-free, until they got on their feet. That was 3 years ago. They were still on my feet, not their own. I pulled into the driveway at exactly 6 o'clock, like the invitation said. Not that it was much of an invitation, a cheap cardstock envelope with my name scrawled on it arriving a week late while everyone else got personalized photo cards. The house looked stunning, white lights wrapped around the porch columns, a fresh evergreen wreath on the door, warm golden light pouring from every window. I could hear Christmas music and laughter drifting out, the sound of family gathering, the sound of joy, the sound of a party I was obligated to attend but not actually wanted at. I sat in my car for 30 seconds, gripping the steering wheel, staring at that wreath. Then I reached for the gift bag on the passenger seat, red and silver, tied with gold ribbon. It looked cheerful, festive, innocent. Inside was a Christmas card with a single handwritten line, "Merry Christmas. Consider this your notice." Beneath the card was a copy of the house deed, my name highlighted in bright yellow marker. And beneath that, a formal eviction notice, legally filed, dated, stamped. 30 days. That's all they had left. My hands were steady as I walked up those porch steps. My heart wasn't racing. I wasn't nervous or angry or even sad anymore. I was calm, cold even. 5 years of swallowing insults had led me here and I was ready. 5 years of being erased, ignored, mocked, and bled dry. 5 years of funding their lives while being treated like I was the burden. 5 years of hearing my son's voice grow distant on the phone, of canceled dinners, of being uninvited from holidays, of watching Vanessa post photos of family gatherings I wasn't included in. I'd reached my limit 3 months ago. Tonight was just the execution. I rang the doorbell. The door swung open almost immediately, and there she stood. Vanessa, my daughter-in-law, 29 years old, beautiful in that sharp, calculated way. She was wearing a black cocktail dress, designer, I could tell, with her hair swept up and diamond earrings catching the light. A champagne flute dangled from her manicured fingers. She looked at me the way you'd look at something unpleasant you found on your shoe. And then she smiled. That smile, the one that never reached her cold eyes. "Eleanor," she said, her voice sticky sweet and poisonous. She paused, just long enough for the guests behind her to quiet down, just long enough to make sure they'd hear what came next. Then louder, so much louder, she said, "Losers don't get to come inside." Laughter exploded behind her. Someone whistled. Someone else said something I couldn't quite make out, but the tone was clear, mocking, cruel. I saw my son in the background, wineglass in hand, laughing along with everyone else. Not defending me, not even looking uncomfortable, just laughing. I smiled. Not a polite smile. Not a strained, trying to keep the peace smile, a real smile, the kind of smile you give when you know something nobody else in the room knows, the kind of smile that comes from 5 years of documenting every payment, every insult, every lie, the kind of smile that comes from having already pressed send on the legal paperwork that would destroy their lives. I held out the gift bag, and Vanessa took it, curious, suspicious, but too vain to refuse a gift in front of her audience. "Merry Christmas, Vanessa," I said quietly. Then I turned around and walked away. Every step down those porch steps felt like shedding weight. 5 years of bending over backward, of trying to be enough, of funding a life they claimed was theirs. It all fell away with each footfall. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. I heard the door close behind me, heard the laughter resume, heard them dismiss me like I was nothing, and I just kept walking, got in my car. Started the engine, pulled out of the driveway, my house, my driveway, my mortgage payment that would stop processing at midnight. I drove home in complete silence. No radio, no tears, no screaming into the void, just the hum of the engine and the glow of Christmas lights blurring past my windows. I didn't feel victorious, I didn't feel vindicated. I just felt done. 5 years of trying to be the mother Robert wanted me to be, the grandmother I'd never get to be, the family glue that held everyone together. And for what? To be called a loser at my own front door. No, I was finished. When I got home, I poured myself a glass of Robert's favorite whiskey, the expensive kind we saved for special occasions. I carried it to the mantel where his photo sat, the one from our 30th anniversary. He was smiling, healthy, alive. I raised my glass to him. I kept my promise, I whispered. I took care of our boy. For 5 years I took care of him, paid his bills, kept him afloat, protected him from consequences. I took a sip, felt the burn in my throat. But you also told me not to let him become weak, and I failed that one, didn't I? I made him so comfortable he forgot what struggle feels like. So comfortable he let his wife humiliate the woman who gave him everything. Another sip. Well, now I'm taking care of myself, and he's about to learn what it means to stand on his own. At midnight, my automated payments stopped. Every single one. The mortgage payment that should have processed on the 1st, canceled. The 2 car payments, canceled. The insurance policies I'd been covering without them knowing, health, auto, home, all canceled. The credit card I'd given them for emergencies that they'd maxed out twice, frozen and closed. Utility bills I'd quietly been paying, transferred back to their names with 0 balance, 0 auto pay. 5 years of financial life support, unplugged in an instant. I sat in my living room watching the clock strike midnight, imagining the emails hitting their inboxes, the payment rejections processing, the automated notices being sent. It felt like watching dominoes fall in slow motion. I slept better that night than I had in months. Woke up at 6:30 on Christmas morning to pale winter light and silence, made myself coffee, sat at the kitchen table with the newspaper, something I hadn't done in years because I was always too stressed, too anxious, too busy trying to manage their crises. And then, at 7 o'clock exactly, my phone buzzed on the table. Michael's name lit up the screen. I stared at it. Let it ring once, twice, 3 times. Watched his name flash and vibrate against the wood. Then I picked it up, swiped to answer, and said 2 words, "Merry Christmas." His voice cracked immediately. "Mom? Mom, what did you do?" And that's when I knew. The door I'd been holding open for 5 years. The one I'd been standing in, arms aching, heart breaking, begging him to walk through and see me, had finally mercifully closed. After I hung up on Michael, the house was so quiet I could hear my own heartbeat. You'd think I'd feel something dramatic, guilt, rage, triumph, but I didn't. I felt light, like I'd been carrying a weight for so long I'd forgotten what it felt like to stand up straight. I made myself another cup of coffee, sat at the kitchen table, and just breathed. For the first time in 5 years, I wasn't waiting for a crisis call, wasn't checking my phone every 10 minutes to see if they needed something, wasn't calculating how much I could spare this month. I was just still. And it felt like freedom. But freedom comes with its own kind of guilt, doesn't it? I kept thinking about Robert, about the promise I made him. Take care of our boy. I'd repeated those words to myself 1,000 times over the past 5 years, using them to justify every check I wrote, every insult I swallowed, every boundary I let them cross. But sitting there in the silence, I realized something Robert also said: don't let him become weak. And I'd failed that part spectacularly. I hadn't taken care of Michael. I'd crippled him, made him so comfortable in his dependence that he'd forgotten how to stand on his own. And worse, I'd let him become the kind of man who'd let his wife call his mother a loser and laugh along with her. That's when I saw it. A small envelope on the floor by the front door, half hidden under the mail slot. I almost missed it. Plain white, no stamp, hand-delivered. My name written in wobbly letters, Grandma Eleanor. My hands shook as I opened it. Inside was a Christmas card, homemade, covered in crayon drawings, Santa Claus and reindeer and a wonky Christmas tree. And at the bottom, in a child's handwriting, "I miss you. Love, your future grandson." It wasn't signed by a real child. There was no Leo, no grandchild. But it was Vanessa's handwriting, mimicking a child's scrawl. A manipulation tactic. A guilt trip. One last attempt to pull me back in by dangling the fantasy of a grandchild I'd never have. I stared at that card for a long time. And then something inside me turned to ice. She'd gone there. She'd weaponized the thing I wanted most, a grandchild, a legacy, a reason for all of this to matter. She'd used my grief, my loneliness, my maternal instincts as a tool to manipulate me. And that's when I knew this wasn't just about setting boundaries anymore. This was about dismantling everything she'd built on my back. Every lie, every illusion, every ounce of pride she'd constructed using my money. I went to my office, Robert's old study, and pulled out the filing cabinet. 5 years of documents, bank statements, canceled checks, credit card statements, receipts for emergency repairs and medical bills and business investments. I spread them across the desk like evidence at a crime scene and started making a ledger. A physical, handwritten record of every single dollar I'd given them. Mortgage payments, $2,400 per month for 36 months. Car payments, $650 and $480 per month. Insurance premiums, utility bills I'd quietly covered, the $15,000 medical emergency that funded their Cancun vacation, the $150,000 business investment that bought Vanessa a luxury car and designer wardrobe. Line by line, month by month, I documented it all. $347,000. That's what my silence cost. That's what my love bought. I wrote that number at the bottom of the ledger in red ink and underlined it twice. Then I pulled out the mortgage documents, the original paperwork from when I'd refinanced the house 3 years ago. There it was, clear as day. Eleanor Marie Harrison, sole owner and borrower. Michael and Vanessa weren't on the deed, weren't on the loan, weren't anywhere in the legal documentation. They'd been living in my house, renovating my property, posting photos of their home on social media, and they'd never once asked to see the paperwork. They just assumed. And I'd let them. I pulled up Vanessa's social media profiles on my laptop, the ones she hadn't deleted yet. Her entire brand was built on the illusion of success, the beautiful home, the luxury lifestyle, the self-made entrepreneur aesthetic. Every post was a performance. #blessed, #house goals, #living my best life. I scrolled through months of content, calculating the worth of every item she flaunted, designer handbags I'd paid for, furniture I'd funded, renovations I'd financed. Her entire identity was a house of cards, and I held every receipt that could blow it down. My phone buzzed, a text from Michael. But it wasn't his words, it was a forwarded message from Vanessa. I could tell by the tone. "Tell your mother she's jinxed us. Ever since she showed up with that creepy gift bag, everything's falling apart. She's probably sabotaging us somehow. She's always been jealous of what we've built. Tell her to fix this or she'll never see us again." I read it twice. The grammatical errors, the paranoia, the complete lack of self-awareness. She genuinely believed I was the problem, that I was jealous, that their collapsing finances were bad luck or sabotage, not the natural consequence of me stopping the flow of free money. And that's when I realized she was too careless to fight me, too entitled to see the truth, too arrogant to believe she could actually lose. I'd been worried she might be strategic, might mount some kind of counterattack, might manipulate Michael into guilt-tripping me back into submission. But this message told me everything I needed to know. She wasn't a worthy opponent. She was a spoiled child throwing a tantrum because the ATM stopped working. I looked at myself in the bathroom mirror that night, really looked. The woman staring back at me wasn't the gentle, accommodating mother-in-law I'd been 5 years ago. My expression had changed, sharper, harder. The softness around my eyes had been replaced by something colder, more purposeful. I used to see Robert in my reflection, his kindness, his patience. Now I saw something else, something I wasn't sure I liked but couldn't deny. I'd become calculating, strategic. I'd turned my grief into data and my love into leverage. And the strangest part? I didn't hate it. I decided then I wouldn't contact them, not for 3 days. I'd let the silence compound, let the fear build, let them scramble and panic and search for answers I wouldn't provide. Grief is loud, it screams and cries and demands attention. But revenge is silent, and in that silence I could finally hear the numbers speaking the truth. Every receipt was a sentence, every bank statement was a verdict, and I was the judge, jury, and executioner. My goal crystallized. I wasn't just cutting them off financially. I was destroying the two things Vanessa valued most, the house she thought made her somebody and the illusion of success she'd built on my foundation. I would take back the house, expose the lies, dismantle the performance. And I would do it so thoroughly, so methodically, that she'd never be able to rebuild the same way again. I opened my contact list and scrolled to a name I hadn't called in months. Richard Harrison, Robert's younger brother. A real estate attorney. Sharp, ruthless, and fiercely protective of family. He'd offered to help me months ago when I'd first discovered the inheritance scheme documents. I'd declined then, hoping Michael would come to his senses. But now I was ready. I typed a simple message, "Richard, I need your help. It's time." And then I went to bed, the keys to my house sitting on the nightstand, a reminder that I'd always held the power. I'd just forgotten to use it. 3 days. That's how long the silence lasted before Michael broke. I was in the garden when he called, pulling weeds from the flower bed Robert had planted our first year in this house. It was cold, my hands were freezing, but I needed to be doing something normal, something that proved I was still human, still capable of mundane tasks, even while orchestrating my son's financial collapse. The phone buzzed in my coat pocket. I let it ring 4 times before answering, let him sweat a little longer. "Mom." His voice wasn't tearful this time. It was sharp, panicked, angry. "What the hell is going on? The bank, they're saying the mortgage payment didn't process. Again. They're saying it's been declined twice now, and if we don't make a lump sum payment by the end of the week, they're starting foreclosure proceedings." "Foreclosure, Mom. They're going to take the house." I pulled another weed, roots and all, and dropped it in the bucket beside me. "Michael, mortgage payments don't just stop processing. Have you checked your account? Maybe there's an issue with your automatic payments." "There is no automatic payment. That's what I'm trying to tell you. Vanessa's been going through every file, every document we have, and we can't find any record of us ever setting up a mortgage payment. Nothing. It's like it just existed, and now it doesn't." I let the silence stretch, counted to 5 in my head, then said carefully, "That's very strange. Modern banking can be incredibly complex. Maybe you should contact the mortgage company directly and ask for a payment history." "We did." His voice cracked with frustration. "They said the account is in good standing up until December and then suddenly nothing. They won't tell us who was making the payments because of privacy laws or something. They just keep saying the account holder needs to contact them." "But we're the account holders. We live here." "Are you?" I asked quietly. "Are you certain your names are on the mortgage documents?" Silence. Long, terrible silence. "Then, what are you talking about?" I stood up, brushed the dirt from my knees, and walked toward the back porch. "I'm talking about making sure you understand exactly what you own and what you don't. Michael, when was the last time you actually looked at the deed to that house?" He stumbled over his words. "Vanessa handles all that stuff, the paperwork. She said everything was set up." "Of course she did." I sat down on the porch steps, watching my breath fog in the cold air. This was the moment. The crack in his reality. I could push harder, break him open, force him to see the truth right now, or I could let him dangle a little longer. Let Vanessa's lies compound. Let the panic build until they were desperate enough to accept any lifeline I threw. "Mom, please." His voice shifted, softened. The little boy voice he used when he wanted something. I know things haven't been good between us. I know Vanessa said some things at Christmas that were out of line. But please, if you know something, if you can help us, please." "What exactly did Vanessa say to you about Christmas?" I interrupted. "About me leaving?" He hesitated. "She said you were being dramatic, that you couldn't take a joke, that you've always been oversensitive about being included." I closed my eyes, took a breath. "And you believed her." He stopped, started again. "She's my wife, Mom. And I'm your mother, the woman who raised you, who buried your father beside you, who has been—" I caught myself. Almost said too much. "Michael, I don't have access to your mortgage account. That's between you, Vanessa, and the bank. If there's a problem, you need to figure it out." It was technically true. I didn't have access to their account because they didn't have one. The mortgage was mine. Only mine. Always had been, but he didn't need to know that yet. "Vanessa's been up for 2 days straight going through files," he said, desperation creeping back into his voice. She's convinced someone's sabotaging us. She thinks maybe your account got hacked or something, and that's why payments stopped." My account. So Vanessa was starting to piece it together. Not fast enough, but she was getting there. "Michael, I can't help you with something I don't understand. But I can make a phone call. I have an old acquaintance. Your Uncle Richard. He's a real estate attorney. Maybe he can help you navigate this." "Uncle Richard?" Hope flooded his voice. Could you ask him to call me?" "I'll reach out to him tonight," I said. "But Michael, I need you to understand something. You're a grown man. At some point you have to take responsibility for your own life, for your own choices, and for the people you choose to trust." "What's that supposed to mean?" I looked at the garden, at the weeds I'd pulled, at the dirt under my fingernails. "It means Vanessa told you I couldn't take a joke. But did you ever stop to ask her why she thought it was funny to call your mother a loser at your front door?" Silence again. But this time I could hear him thinking, could hear the first crack of doubt forming. "I'll call Richard," I said. "But after that, you're on your own. I can't keep saving you from consequences, Michael. Your father made me promise not to let you become weak. I'm realizing now that I broke that promise a long time ago. I'm trying to fix it." I hung up before he could respond. Sat there on the cold porch steps, hands shaking, chest tight. The cruelest thing a mother can do is teach her son that his problems disappear if he cries hard enough. I'd taught him that lesson for 5 years. Now I had to break it, even if it broke him too. I went inside, poured myself tea, and called Richard. "It's time," I said. "I need you to meet me tomorrow morning. I'm ready to start the legal process." "About damn time," Richard said. "I'll bring the paperwork." I hung up and stared at the phone in my hand. Savior and executioner. That's what I'd become. And tomorrow, I'd bring in the ally who would help me finish what I'd started. I met Richard at a small cafe 40 minutes outside of town, the kind of place where nobody knows your name and nobody cares why you're there. He was already seated when I arrived, reading something on his tablet, a cup of black coffee growing cold in front of him. Robert's younger brother, same sharp jaw, same careful eyes, but where Robert had been warm, Richard was precise. A lawyer down to his bones. He stood when he saw me, and for a moment I saw the concern flash across his face. "Eleanor, you look like I haven't slept in 3 days." I sat down across from him, set my purse on the empty chair. "Because I haven't. Not really." He nodded, pushed a folder across the table toward me. "I pulled everything after you called. Property records, mortgage documents, payment history, the original loan agreements. Eleanor, you have an airtight case for eviction. The house is yours, always has been. They have no legal claim." I opened the folder, scanned the documents I'd already memorized. "But I can't claim financial restitution, can I? The payments I made, legally they were gifts, not loans." "Correct." Richard leaned forward, lowering his voice even though the nearest customer was 3 tables away. "Unless you can prove fraud or undue influence, every dollar you gave them was voluntary. You'd have to demonstrate that they deliberately deceived you or coerced you into making those payments." "Which they did," I said flatly. "The inheritance scheme documents, the lies they told family, the manipulation, which would be hard to prove in court without Michael's direct testimony. And he's not going to testify against his wife." Richard paused, took a sip of his cold coffee, grimaced. "But Eleanor, there's something else, something you need to know." I looked up from the documents. His expression had shifted, nervous, almost apologetic. 3 months ago, Vanessa contacted me directly. She said she and Michael wanted to explore their financial options. She asked me, off the record, about establishing a home equity line of credit against the property. He pulled out another document, slid it across the table. She brought me paperwork. Wanted me to notarize her signature on a loan application. She told me you'd already agreed to transfer the deed into their names, but that the paperwork was in process. I stared at the document. Vanessa's signature. Michael's forged signature. I could tell by the wobbly letters, nothing like his actual handwriting. A loan application for $200,000 against the house's equity. My house. What did you do? I told her I couldn't notarize anything without seeing the original deed and title transfer documents. She got angry, said I was being difficult, said family should help family. Richard's jaw tightened. I called Michael afterward to verify. He had no idea she'd contacted me. Said Vanessa must have been exploring options without telling him. He asked me not to mention it to you because it would cause drama. Of course he did. I closed my eyes, felt the weight of it settle over me. She hadn't just been spending my money, she'd been actively trying to steal my assets. And Michael knew. Maybe not the details, but he knew she was operating behind the scenes, and he'd covered for her. What else? I asked quietly. Richard hesitated. I did some digging. Vanessa's credit score is in the low 500 seconds. She has $47,000 in consumer debt across 8 credit cards. She defaulted on a car loan 2 years ago. She's drowning, Eleanor, and she's been using your payments to stay afloat while maintaining a lifestyle she can't afford. He pulled out his phone, turned it toward me. Vanessa's Instagram. Post after post of designer bags, luxury brunches, home renovations, inspirational quotes about building your empire and manifesting abundance. Thousands of followers, dozens of comments praising her success. She's built an entire brand around this lifestyle, calls herself a lifestyle consultant, sells e-courses on financial freedom and budget luxury. She's literally monetizing advice on how to live beyond your means while you're funding her entire existence. I felt something cold and sharp settle in my chest. She's selling financial advice while being bankrupt. Worse. She's selling it to vulnerable women who think she's the real deal. I checked the business registration. It's a sole proprietorship, no LLC protection. If she's sued for fraud or misrepresentation, she's personally liable. And Eleanor, he leaned closer. If we can prove she was fraudulently misrepresenting her financial situation while soliciting clients, we can expose her publicly, destroy the brand, remove her primary source of income and her social credibility in one move. A secret shared is a burden halved. But in my world, a secret shared was a new kind of weapon. Richard wasn't just my lawyer anymore. He was my partner in this, my ally, the person who saw exactly what I saw and was willing to help me dismantle it piece by piece. What do you need from me? I asked. Let the foreclosure notice process. Don't intervene yet. Let them panic. Let them scramble. In the meantime, I'll build the fraud case. Document everything about her business. Screenshot every post, every course description, every income claim. When she's desperate enough, she'll make a mistake. And when she does, we'll have everything we need to bury her. I nodded slowly, looked at that coffee cup sitting between us on the table. The physical line between his professional obligation and this new, darker alliance we were forming. What about Michael? What about him? Richard's voice was harder now. Eleanor, I love my nephew, but he's made his choice. He's chosen to protect her instead of you. He's chosen to let her manipulate him instead of standing up for what's right. You can't save him from himself. I need to set up a separate account, something Michael can access if things get too bad. For emergencies. Richard nodded. I'll handle it. But Eleanor, you need to prepare yourself. This is going to get uglier before it gets better. I stood, gathered my things. Richard, it's already ugly. I'm just making sure everyone can see it. I left that cafe knowing I wasn't alone anymore, knowing I had someone who understood the geometry of this fight, the angles, the leverage points, the places where pressure would cause the entire structure to collapse. And I knew exactly where to apply that pressure. Vanessa's brand, her carefully constructed illusion of success, her house of cards built on my foundation. It was time to find the pin that would bring it all down. I spent the next 2 days doing something I never thought I'd do. I became a digital detective, a stalker, someone who analyzed spreadsheets and social media analytics like they were evidence in a murder trial. Richard had given me everything. Vanessa's payment records, her business registration documents, her tax filings. But it was her social media that told the real story, the lie she'd been selling to thousands of people while I paid her bills. I created a fake account, downloaded every post, screenshotted every caption. And then I started cross-referencing the numbers. She claimed 47,000 followers, but her engagement rates were dismal, 30, maybe 40 likes per post, a handful of generic comments. So inspiring, love this, goals, all from accounts with 0 followers themselves, profile pictures stolen from stock photo sites. I ran her account through a bot detection tool Richard had recommended. The results were damning. Over 60% of her followers were fake, purchased. She'd spent thousands of dollars, my dollars, buying an audience that didn't exist. I found the receipts. Buried in her credit card statements Richard had obtained through his professional channels I didn't ask about. Monthly payments to follower farms, engagement-boosting services, comment pods. She was spending $800 a month to maintain the illusion of success, more than they were budgeting for groceries, more than they were spending on utilities. She was literally starving her household to feed her vanity. I sat at my desk, staring at the screen, and caught my reflection in the dark window behind it. Who was this woman, who spends hours analyzing someone else's social media like a prosecutor building a case, who cross-references bank statements with Instagram posts to document lies? I didn't recognize myself. My face looked harder, sharper. The softness Robert had loved was gone, replaced by something cold and methodical. I was becoming exactly what I was fighting against, someone who manipulated, who deceived, who weaponized information. But then I saw the post. The one that made my hands shake with rage instead of guilt. It was a photo of the house, my house, at sunset, golden light spilling across the front porch. The caption read, "Grateful for everything we've built together. This life didn't come easy, but when you work hard and stay focused, dreams really do come true. Teaching our future little ones that nothing worth having comes free. #blessed, #hard work pays off, #building legacy." Future little ones. She was still using the phantom grandchild as content, still performing gratitude for things she hadn't earned, still teaching lessons she'd never learned, and the comments below were full of women praising her, asking for advice, buying into the lie. I closed the laptop before I put my fist through it. Michael called that afternoon. His voice was hollow, defeated. "Mom, the bank's moving forward with foreclosure. We have 30 days. I'm going to have to sell my car. Vanessa's talking about pulling Leo out of private school." He caught himself. "I mean, if we had kids, we'd have to pull them out of school. We're drowning." There was no Leo. There never had been. But he was still performing Vanessa's script, still manufacturing sympathy with fictional children. I wanted to scream at him. Instead, I said quietly, "Michael, how much do you need, right now, to stay afloat?" "I can't ask you for money, Mom. Not after. I'm not offering to pay the mortgage. I'm asking how much you need personally to survive the next 30 days. Food, gas, essentials." Silence. Then, barely audible, "Maybe 2,000? I'll transfer 3,000 into your personal account, not the joint account, your account. Use it wisely." I paused. "And Michael, this is a loan. I expect to be paid back when you get on your feet." "Mom, thank you. Don't thank me. Just think about why you're in this position. Think about who put you here." I hung up before he could respond. The transfer was strategic. Keep him dependent on me, not on them as a unit. Give him just enough to survive, but not enough to save Vanessa's sinking ship. Create a lifeline that only he could access, forcing him to see that I was still his safety net, not her. It was manipulative, calculated, exactly the kind of thing I would have judged someone else for doing, and I didn't care. That evening, Vanessa posted again. A quote graphic. White text on a black background. "Some people can't handle your success. They'll try to tear you down because they're too small to build themselves up. I choose to rise above the jealousy and keep building my empire. Petty people get blocked. #no time for haters. #boss life." She was talking about me. Had to be. And she was posting it publicly, performing victimhood for her fake audience, painting herself as the one being attacked. The audacity was breathtaking. I opened a new document and started typing. A dossier. Every piece of evidence I'd compiled, screenshots of her follower analytics, receipts for bot services, bank statements showing the spending, tax documents proving her business was losing money, testimonials from women who'd bought her courses and gotten nothing of value. I cross-referenced her posts claiming certain income levels with her actual tax returns showing losses. I documented every lie, every exaggeration, every fraudulent claim. You don't fight fire with water, you fight it with a hotter, cleaner flame. But even a clean flame leaves ash, and I was about to burn Vanessa's entire world down. I knew what would happen. The exposure wouldn't just destroy her brand, it would humiliate Michael by association. His colleagues would see it, his friends, extended family. Everyone would know he'd been married to a fraud, that his life had been a performance funded by his mother, that his success was an illusion. He would be collateral damage in my war against her. I looked in the mirror again, asked myself the question I'd been avoiding. Was I willing to hurt my son to save him? Was I willing to become the villain in his story to force him to see the truth? The woman staring back at me, cold-eyed, calculating, ruthless, answered without hesitation, yes, because sometimes love looks like letting everything burn so something real can grow in the ashes. I saved a document, created a new email account, made a list of influencer gossip accounts, consumer protection advocates, and local news outlets. Tomorrow I would send it. Tomorrow, Vanessa's house of cards would collapse, and I would watch from a distance, knowing I'd lit the match. I pressed send at 6:47 a.m. on a Tuesday morning. The dossier went to 12 accounts, 3 major influencer gossip platforms, 2 consumer protection advocates with large followings, 4 local news outlets, 2 financial fraud watchdog accounts, and 1 account that specialized in exposing lifestyle coaches with fake credentials. The subject line was simple: lifestyle influencer selling financial advice while bankrupt, full documentation attached. Then I made breakfast. Scrambled eggs, toast, coffee. I ate slowly, methodically, like it was any other Tuesday, like I hadn't just detonated a bomb under my daughter-in-law's entire existence. The mundane normalcy of it felt obscene. But that was the point, wasn't it? Revenge isn't dramatic, it's clinical. It's eggs and toast while you wait for someone's life to implode. Michael called at 9:15 a.m., but I didn't answer. He called again at 10:30, then 11, then 11:45. I let every call go to voicemail, listened to his voice getting progressively more desperate. "Mom, please pick up. Mom, something's happening. We need to talk. Mom," the bank called again. They're accelerating the timeline. I deleted each message after listening once. He needed to sit in it, needed to feel what it was like when the person you depended on stopped answering. But while I waited for the dossier to land, my mind kept circling back to the moment that had started all of this. Not Christmas Eve, not the eviction, the real beginning, 3 years ago, the day I'd found the screenshots. I'd been helping Michael move some furniture. They'd asked me to come over, and like always, I'd said yes. My phone died, and I'd asked to borrow Michael's to call AAA about a flat tire. He'd handed it over without thinking, and that's when I saw it. A text thread between him and Vanessa left open on the screen. Her words, "You need to start creating distance from your mother. She's too involved. Every time she helps us, there are strings attached. I don't want our kids growing up thinking they owe her something just because she has money." Michael's response, "I know. You're right. I'll start canceling plans with her." Vanessa. Good. And stop telling her details about our life. She doesn't need to know our business. The less she knows, the less she can control. I'd stood there in their living room, my living room, reading those words over and over. Not just the financial manipulation, not just the lies, but the deliberate, calculated erasure of me from my son's life, the coaching, the strategic isolation. She wasn't just taking my money, she was taking my bloodline, my legacy, my family. And Michael was letting her. I never told him I'd seen it. I just started documenting everything, started building my case, started preparing for this exact moment. The phone rang again. This time it was a number I didn't recognize. I answered. "You bitch." Vanessa's voice was shrill, hysterical. "You bitter, controlling old woman. You're trying to ruin our lives because you can't stand that Michael chose me over you." I set down my coffee cup, took a slow breath. "Vanessa, I haven't done anything to you." "Liar, I know it was you, the bank, the accounts, everything falling apart right after you left on Christmas. It's you. You're sabotaging us because you're jealous and alone and pathetic." "Vanessa," I said calmly, "I'm not responsible for your financial decisions. If your accounts are in trouble, that's between you and your creditors. You know exactly what you did. Her voice cracked. "You can't do this. We have a family. We have a life. You can't just destroy everything we've built." "Built?" I let the word hang there. "Tell me, what exactly did you build? Because from where I'm sitting, Every brick in your foundation has my name on it." Silence. Then, lower, more dangerous, "I'm getting a protection order. I've already talked to a lawyer. You're harassing us. You're unstable. After Christmas, the way you acted, giving us that creepy card, showing up uninvited." "I was invited," I interrupted. "You sent me an invitation. And now you're interfering with our finances, stalking us, trying to manipulate Michael. The lawyer said I have grounds, especially given your age and your mental state since Robert died." There it was. The real plan. Not just isolation, not just financial control. Legal erasure. A protection order that would paint me as unstable, dangerous, unfit. That would give her legal ammunition to keep me from Michael permanently. This wasn't reactive. This was premeditated. She'd been planning this for months, probably since the moment I'd discovered too much. "Vanessa," I said, my voice ice, "file whatever you want, but before you do, you should know. There are 12 media outlets that received a very detailed report this morning about your business practices, your fake followers, your fraudulent financial advice, your debt, all of it, documented, with receipts. I'd suggest you check your social media mentions before you make any more threats." I heard her sharp intake of breath. Then I hung up. She thought she was cutting me out of Michael's life. She didn't realize she was handing me the wire to trip her. Every move she'd made to erase me had left evidence. Every lie had created a paper trail. Every manipulation had given me ammunition. And now, the thread she'd tried to cut, the red thread of loyalty, of bloodline, of family, I was pulling it back. Even if it hurt Michael, even if it destroyed everything. Because she'd made this war about more than money. She'd made it about my right to exist in my own son's life. At 2:37 p.m., my phone buzzed with a notification. A tagged post from one of the gossip accounts. The headline read, "Lifestyle influencers, House of Cards, broke, buying bots and selling financial advice she doesn't follow." The first domino had fallen. It took 14 hours for Vanessa's world to collapse. The first platform picked up the story at 3:47 p.m. Within an hour, it had been shared 2,000 times. By evening, 3 more accounts had posted their own analysis, each one more damning than the last. By midnight, "To House of Cards Exposed" was trending locally. People were screenshot comparing her posts about financial freedom with the evidence of her debt. Someone created a side-by-side comparison of her claimed income versus her actual tax returns. Another account did a deep dive on her fake follower ratio. The internet, when it decides to destroy you, is efficient and merciless. I sat at my kitchen table, laptop open, watching it unfold like a wildfire I'd started with a single match. The comment section was exactly what I'd anticipated. A brutal, perfect divide. Half the people were outraged on behalf of the women she'd scammed, calling her a fraud, a con artist, demanding refunds. The other half were defending her, claiming it was a witch hunt, that everyone bought followers, that she was being targeted for being successful and female. The division was the point. Because even the defenders couldn't deny the evidence. They could only argue about whether it mattered. 3 of her sponsors dropped her by morning. A skincare company, a meal prep service, an online banking app that had been paying her $2,000 a month for promotional posts. All 3 issued nearly identical statements. "We were unaware of the discrepancies in influencer names' business practices and have terminated our partnership effective immediately." Vanessa deleted the sponsored posts within hours, but the internet never forgets. Screenshots lived forever. That's when I made the call to Richard. "It's time for the second strike." He didn't hesitate. "I'll have it to the business editor by noon." The public records were already accessible. Foreclosure proceedings are public information once they're filed. Richard just made sure the right person noticed them, made sure they connected the dots between the bot scandal and the financial collapse, made sure they understood this wasn't just an influencer buying fake followers, this was someone selling financial advice while being bankrupt and losing her home. The headline hit the local business newspaper's website at 4 p.m. Local lifestyle gurus home faces foreclosure amidst bot scandal. The article was clinical, factual, devastating. It outlined the foreclosure timeline, mentioned the property value, quoted anonymous sources familiar with the situation about the family's financial struggles. And then it did something beautiful. It juxtaposed Vanessa's recent posts about abundance mindset and manifesting wealth with the legal reality of her impending eviction. The hypocrisy wrote itself. Michael called at 6:30 p.m. I almost didn't answer, but something in the persistence of his ringing made me pick up. "Mom." His voice was barely above a whisper. She's not okay. She's been crying for hours. She smashed her phone against the wall. She's saying everyone's out to get her, that someone's trying to destroy us, that this is all a conspiracy." "Is she wrong?" I asked quietly. Silence. "Then what? Is she wrong that someone's trying to destroy her? Because from where I'm sitting, Vanessa destroyed herself. She bought fake followers. She sold advice she didn't follow. She lied about her finances while charging vulnerable women for courses on financial freedom. All I did was document the truth." His voice cracked. "You leaked this. You sent it to those accounts." "I sent facts to people who care about consumer protection. What they did with those facts was their choice." "She's talking about killing herself, Mom." His voice broke entirely. "She's sitting in the bedroom saying her life is over, that she can't face anyone, that she wants to die, and you're sitting there acting like this is justice?" For a moment, just one moment, I felt it. Pity. Genuine, human pity for a woman whose entire identity was being dismantled in real time by strangers on the internet. A woman who'd built her worth on external validation and was watching it evaporate. But then I remembered. Losers don't get to come inside. I remembered the screenshots, the isolation campaign, the inheritance scheme, the protection order threat, and the pity evaporated like morning fog. "Michael, if Vanessa is in crisis, you need to call a professional. I'm not her mother, I'm not her friend. I'm the woman she spent 3 years erasing from your life while spending my money." I hung up and stared at the laptop screen. The comments kept multiplying, the shares kept climbing, and somewhere in that digital wildfire was a woman I'd never met, a young mother who'd bought Vanessa's $497 course on budget luxury, living with money she didn't have, believing the lie that Vanessa had it figured out. That woman deserved to know the truth. They all did. My phone rang again. Unknown number. I answered. "Mrs. Harrison? This is Jennifer Cho from Channel 7 News. I'm doing a story on the Vanessa Torres situation, and I understand you're her mother-in-law. Would you be willing to provide a comment?" I paused, considered, then said carefully, "I believe in supporting genuine effort and authentic work ethic. I don't support illusions. That's all I'll say. Can you confirm whether you've been financially supporting?" No further comment. "Thank you." I hung up. The next morning, a courier delivered a thick envelope to my door. Cease and desist letter, legal letterhead, Vanessa's signature, accusing me of harassment, defamation, intentional infliction of emotional distress, and interference with business relationships, demanding I retract all statements, issue a public apology, and cease all contact. I photographed it and sent it to Richard. His response came within minutes. "Don't worry. I'm filing a preemptive injunction against her accusations. She's got no standing. Everything released was factual public information. Plus, I've got documentation of her attempted equity fraud. If she wants a legal war, she'll lose." I set the phone down and looked at my laptop, the keyboard cold and hard under my fingers. This machine, this collection of plastic keys and circuits, had become my weapon. Not my hands, not my voice, just information systematically deployed. She built her life on a pretty lie. My revenge wasn't about tearing down her house. It was about exposing the foundation of dust it was built on. And now, with the house just days from seizure, there was only one thing left to do: face Michael directly. Make him choose. Not between me and Vanessa, he'd already made that choice, but between the truth and the lie. Between who he was and who he'd become. I picked up the phone and texted him, "We need to talk, in person, tomorrow, just you and me." The final confrontation was coming. The house was seized on a Thursday morning at 9 a.m. I wasn't there, but Richard was. He sent me a photo, the locksmith changing the locks, a sheriff's deputy standing watch, and in the background, Michael loading boxes into a borrowed truck. The house, my house, Robert's childhood home, the place his parents built with their own hands, was finally mine again, empty, silent, reclaimed. I stared at that photo for a long time, waiting to feel something like victory. All I felt was tired. The news trucks arrived by noon. Channel 7 ran the story at 5 p.m. Local influencer loses home amid fraud scandal. They showed B-roll of the house, blurred photos of Vanessa from her social media, and interviewed a neighbor who said things like, "Seemed so perfect and you never really know people." They didn't mention me by name, but they quoted my earlier statement. I only support true work ethic, not illusions. The anchor called it cryptic, but pointed. I called it the truth. The internet, predictably, lost its mind. The comments section became a war zone. Half the people were celebrating Vanessa's downfall with gleeful cruelty, calling her a scammer, a fake, demanding she refund everyone she'd defrauded. Someone started a petition. Someone else made a TikTok compilation of her manifestation posts set to circus music. It was vicious and viral, and exactly what happens when you build your life on performance. But the other half broke my heart. They were talking about Michael, about the poor husband who'd been dragged down by his wife's lies, about that little boy. There was no little boy, but they'd seen her posts about future children and filled in the blanks, who'd have to grow up with this scandal. They were pitying the wrong people for the wrong reasons. But their pity was real. And it made me realize I hadn't just destroyed Vanessa. I'd made Michael into a public spectacle too. He called that evening, voice flat and mechanical. "We're moving in with Vanessa's parents. Temporarily, until we figure things out." I could hear Vanessa crying in the background, her mother's sharp voice cutting through. "This is what happens when you marry into toxic families." I almost laughed. Almost. Instead I said, "Michael, are you okay?" Silence. Then, "No, Mom, I'm not okay, but I don't think you care about that anymore." He hung up before I could respond. Maybe he was right. The next day, I did something I swore I wouldn't do. I drove to the house, used my key, my new key, and walked through rooms that still smelled like them, like Vanessa's expensive perfume and Michael's coffee. The living room was empty except for a few forgotten items, a throw pillow, a stack of magazines, a pair of Michael's shoes by the door. I walked upstairs to what would have been the nursery, the room Vanessa had posted about, the one she'd painted pale yellow for the grandchild that didn't exist. There was a stuffed elephant in the corner, a mobile still hanging from the ceiling, props for the performance. I took the elephant, I don't know why. Maybe because it represented the thing she'd weaponized against me, the fantasy of family, the promise of legacy, or maybe because I'm just a sad old woman clutching at symbols in an empty house. I sat on the floor of that empty nursery and let myself feel it. The full weight of what I'd done. I'd taken their home, destroyed her career, humiliated them publicly, and for what? Justice, boundaries, or just revenge dressed up in righteous language? I gave her fame for a week and ruin for a lifetime, but the cost was my own peace. That's the real poison of revenge. It doesn't just destroy your enemy, it hollows you out too. That night, Vanessa made one final post. Her account was hemorrhaging followers by the hour, but she posted anyway. A long, rambling caption over a black screen. "To everyone who's enjoying my pain, you don't know the truth. This is a targeted attack by my husband's family, who couldn't stand that we were building something without their control. My mother-in-law is a corporate investor with connections to the bank that foreclosed on us. She orchestrated this entire thing because I wouldn't let her manipulate our lives. This is elder abuse in reverse. This is what narcissistic family systems do when you set boundaries. I'm the victim here, and history will prove it." I read it 3 times. She'd finally said it, publicly accused me, connected the dots, except she'd connected them into a conspiracy theory that made her sound unhinged. Corporate investor? Orchestrated foreclosure? She was so close to the truth but framed it so desperately that nobody would believe her. Richard called within the hour. "Eleanor, I've drafted a press release. 1 sentence. Want to hear it?" I said yes. He read, "Mrs. Harrison's only investment in her son's life was love and financial support, which she provided freely for 5 years while being systematically erased from his family. She hopes he finds the strength to build a life based on truth rather than performance." Silence. Then I said, "Send it." The press release went out at midnight. By morning, even Vanessa's defenders had gone quiet. Her post made her look paranoid. My statement made me look dignified, wounded but composed, the victim, not the villain. And that's when Vanessa's own family started to crack. Her father posted a comment on a local community page: "We love our daughter, but we don't condone dishonesty. We're working through this as a family." Translation: we're tired of her drama and can't afford her anymore. The relational isolation was complete. Her business was gone, her home was gone, her credibility was gone, and now even her family was creating distance. Everything I'd planned had worked exactly as designed. I should have felt triumphant. Instead, I felt like I was standing in a graveyard I'd dug myself. Richard came to my house the next afternoon with a leather folder. Inside, divorce papers. Fully drafted, legally airtight, leveraging every piece of evidence we'd compiled. Vanessa's fraud, her financial manipulation, her isolation campaign. Everything documented, footnoted, ready for Michael's signature. If he's ready to leave her, Richard said, this gives him the ammunition to do it cleanly. Full custody if there were children, protection of his assets, everything. I stared at those papers and thought, this is it. The final door. The last key. If Michael signs these, Vanessa loses everything, including him. If he doesn't, then I've lost him completely. My phone buzzed. Text from Michael: "I need to see you. Just us, no lawyers, no Vanessa, just you and me. I need the truth, Mom. All of it." The reckoning was finally here. We met at a coffee shop 40 minutes from both our homes. Neutral territory. Public enough that neither of us could make a scene, private enough that we could speak honestly. I got there early, ordered tea I wouldn't drink, and sat by the window watching cars pass. When Michael walked in, I barely recognized him. He'd lost weight. His face was drawn, older somehow. The boy I'd raised was gone, and the man walking toward me looked like he'd been through a war. I suppose he had. He sat down without ordering anything. Just folded his hands on the table and looked at me with eyes that were equal parts anger and exhaustion. "Tell me," he said quietly. "All of it. No lawyer speak, no carefully worded statements. Just the truth, Mom. Did you do this to us?" I took a breath and decided that after 5 years of strategic silence, he deserved the whole truth. "Yes. I paid your mortgage for 3 years. Both car payments, your insurance, health, auto, home, credit card debt twice, the business investment, emergency repairs that were vacations, medical bills that were shopping sprees, $347,000 over 5 years. Every month automatically from my accounts to yours. You never set up a mortgage payment because I was making it. You never questioned where the money came from because it was easier not to ask." His face went white. "Why? Why would you?" "Because you're my son. Because your father died and you were struggling, and I thought I was helping you get on your feet. I thought it was temporary. A few months, maybe a year, until you stabilized. But it never stopped. Every time I tried to pull back, there was another crisis, another emergency, another reason you needed me. And Vanessa made sure of that." "Don't," he said sharply. "Don't blame her for—" I pulled out my phone and slid it across the table. "Read." He looked at the screen. The screenshots I'd kept for 3 years. The text thread between him and Vanessa. Her words: "You need to start creating distance from your mother. She's too involved. Every time she helps us, there are strings attached. I don't want our kids growing up thinking they owe her something just because she has money." His response: "I know. You're right. I'll start canceling plans with her." I watched the color drain from his face as he read. Watched his hands start to shake. When did you?" 3 years ago. You let me borrow your phone to call AAA. It was open on the screen. I read it, and I never told you because I wanted to see how far it would go. I wanted to see if you'd defend me, if you'd question her, if you'd choose me even once. My voice cracked. "You never did." He stared at the phone like it was a bomb. She was trying to set boundaries. That's healthy. "Michael, read the date. That conversation happened 2 weeks after I paid off your $30,000 credit card debt. 2 weeks after I gave you $15,000 for a medical emergency that was actually a vacation to Cancun. She wasn't setting boundaries. She was isolating you from the person funding your entire life so you wouldn't question where the money went." He put his head in his hands. "Oh my God. Oh my God, His voice broke completely. "My whole life is a lie. Everything we built, everything we had. It was all you. It was always you. And I didn't know. How did I not know? Because you chose not to, I said, and the words were cruel but true. You chose comfort over curiosity. You chose her version of reality over mine because it was easier, because it let you be the victim of the controlling mother instead of the man living off her charity. He looked up at me, tears streaming down his face. Why now? Why did you wait until Christmas to do this? Why destroy everything instead of just talking to me? I tried talking to you for 5 years, Michael. Every canceled dinner was me trying. Every ignored phone call, every holiday I wasn't invited to. And then Christmas Eve, she looked me in the eye at the door of my own house, my house that I let you live in, that I paid the mortgage on, and called me a loser who didn't deserve to come inside. And you laughed. You stood there with your wine and your friends and you laughed. His face crumpled. I wasn't. You were. I pulled out another folder, the divorce papers, slid them across the table. Richard prepared these. They document everything, her fraud, her manipulation, her debt. You sign these and you walk away clean. She gets nothing. You get your life back, the real one, not the performance. He stared at the papers like they were a death sentence. Maybe they were. If I sign these, I have nothing. No house, no money, no. You have yourself, I interrupted. You have the chance to rebuild from the ground up, as the man your father wanted you to be, not the man Vanessa coached you into being. I pulled out one more thing, a key. I've leased a small apartment, 2 bedrooms, modest. It's paid for 6 months. After that, you're on your own. There's also a trust fund, $50,000. It's in your name only. She can't touch it. No one can. It's for rebuilding, not maintaining an illusion. He picked up the key with shaking hands, looked at it like it was something foreign. Why are you doing this? After everything, why help me at all? Because you're my son. Because destroying you was never the goal. Freeing you was. Even if it meant becoming the villain in your story. Even if it meant you'd hate me. I'd rather you hate me and be free than love me and be trapped. We sat in silence for a long time. Then slowly, he picked up the pen, signed the papers, pushed them back across the table. I need one thing from you, he said, voice raw. Never lie to me again, not to protect me, not for my own good, never again. I promise. He stood. I stood. And then, awkward and painful and necessary, we hugged. It wasn't warm, it wasn't comfortable, but it was real. The first real thing between us in years. I'm sorry, he whispered. I'm so sorry, Mom, I know, me too. He left first. I sat back down and let myself cry. The lie was the cocoon I built around him. The truth was the sword that finally set him free. And that sword cut me deepest of all. My phone buzzed an hour later. Unknown number. Text message, you haven't won yet. Vanessa had been served. 6 months later, I sat in Richard's office while he walked me through the final documents. The divorce was done. Vanessa had fought it initially, hired a lawyer with money she didn't have, threatened to expose family corruption, promised to take it to trial, but Richard had leverage and precision. Every fraudulent business claim, every fake follower receipt, every attempt to forge Michael's signature on financial documents, every lie she'd told was documented, footnoted, undeniable. Her lawyer had advised her to settle. She walked away with exactly what she'd brought into the marriage, $47,000 in debt and a reputation in ruins. Michael kept nothing but his freedom and a clean slate. It was, Richard said, the most one-sided divorce settlement he'd ever negotiated. I should have felt triumphant. I just felt tired. Michael had moved into the small apartment I'd leased for him. 2 bedrooms, modest kitchen, no luxury finishes. He'd gotten a second job, driving for a delivery service on weekends to supplement his office salary. He was learning what it meant to budget, to sacrifice, to build something real instead of performing something fake. When I visited, I saw a different man, thinner, harder, but more present somehow, more real. He'd stopped making excuses, stopped blaming circumstances. He was taking responsibility finally for the choices he'd made. We had dinner once a month, stiff, careful conversations that were slowly, painfully becoming genuine. He was my son again, not the son I'd lost, but a new version, one who'd been broken down and was rebuilding himself from honest materials. Vanessa tried one last desperate move. She'd organized what she called a protest outside my house. Her mother, and 2 friends holding signs about elder financial abuse and family corruption. A local news station showed up, hoping for drama. Instead, they got 4 women shouting at an empty driveway while neighbors called the police for disturbing the peace. The footage made the rounds online, but not in the way Vanessa intended. The comments were merciless. "This is sad. She needs help. Let it go." Even her supporters had abandoned her. The protest lasted 40 minutes before police asked them to leave. It was the final pathetic punctuation mark on her collapse. I watched the video once, felt nothing, and deleted it. The house, Robert's house, his parents' house, my house, I sold it. Not to strangers, to a young family with 2 small children and a dog, people who would fill it with real memories instead of performances. The sale price was substantial, more than I needed. I used half to pay off the remaining mortgage on my own home. The other half went into a trust. Not for Michael. He'd agreed he didn't want my money anymore. He wanted to earn his own life. But for his future, for the children he might have someday, for the grandchildren I might never meet, the trust would sit, quietly growing, until he was ready to accept it without shame, until he could receive it as a gift instead of a crutch. I kept the house keys, though. The original set from when Robert's parents had given us the house 30 years ago. They sat in a drawer in my kitchen, a reminder of what I'd reclaimed, what I'd protected, what I'd been willing to destroy to save. The moral cost of what I'd done sat heavy on me. I'd spent 5 years funding a lie, then another 6 months destroying it. I'd turned myself into something cold and calculating, something capable of watching my own son suffer because I believed that suffering would save him. I'd weaponized information, manipulated public opinion, and orchestrated a woman's complete social and financial ruin. Was I right to do it? Was justice the same as cruelty? I didn't know. Some days I felt like I'd saved Michael from a predator. Other days I felt like I'd become one myself. The mirror in my bathroom still showed the same hard expression, the same sharp eyes. I'd won the war but lost something softer in myself, something I wasn't sure I'd ever get back. But I'd also won something precious, my dignity, my boundaries. The knowledge that I could stand up for myself even when it meant standing alone, that I could choose my own peace over someone else's comfort, that I could say no more and mean it. These were victories too, even if they tasted like ash. One evening Michael came over for dinner. We ate quietly, talked about small things, his work, the weather, a movie he'd seen. As he was leaving, he turned at the door and said, "Mom, I know I've said this before, but I need to say it again. I'm sorry. For all of it. For letting her isolate you. For not seeing what she was doing. For choosing comfort over truth. I'm sorry." I touched his face, the way I used to when he was small. "I know. And I'm sorry too. For the way I did this. For the pain I caused. For becoming something harder than I wanted to be. You saved me," he said quietly. "Even if it hurt. You saved me." After he left, I sat in my living room, my quiet, peaceful, empty living room, and let myself feel it. The full weight of what I'd done and what it had cost. She'd called me a loser at that door 6 months ago, but I'd walked away winning the only prize that ever mattered, my son, my self-respect, and the quiet dignity of a soul who fought a monster and won back her own reflection. I pulled out the ledger I'd kept. All those receipts, all those payments, all those years of silent sacrifice. At the bottom, in red ink, I'd written $347,000, the cost of enabling, the price of being used. Below it, in black ink, I wrote one final line, paid in full. I closed the ledger and put it away. The revenge was complete, the accounts were settled, the war was over, and I was finally mercifully free. Free from the obligation, free from the deceit, free from the burden of carrying lives that weren't mine to carry. But freedom, I'd learned, wasn't the same as happiness. It was just the space where happiness might someday grow. And in that quiet space, I whispered to the empty room, to Robert's photo on the mantel, to myself, it cost me everything to prove I owned it all. The camera would linger here on my face. Not young, not soft, but at peace, marked by the fight, changed by the fire, finally irrevocably